A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
Welcome in to One Giant Step, a Week 3 recap edition. And in case you couldn't tell, I'm Shaun Morash, joined by Bryce Gelman, and I'm straight giddy. I am straight giddy today. It is September the 22nd. We're taping this right before Sunday Night Football kicks off. We have a 3-episode week here on One Giant Step. You're getting this week, which we thank you for listening to. Little recap of the Browns game. We're going to drop a preview pod ahead of Thursday Night Football and a reaction pod probably sometime late Thursday night, early Friday morning. Anywhere podcasts are available and, of course, free on the Odyssey app. Brycey, baby. Brycey, baby. I feel good. I feel great. First of all, you're getting my first word here on the One Giant Step pod because I didn't have extended post game on WFAN. It's my first day off, and technically speaking, in 19 days. Did I have a couple beverages during the 1 o'clock window? Of course I did. All right. It's Giants football, and I thought I was in for a long afternoon, especially when Eric Gray fumbles the first freaking kickoff of the game and Amari Cooper scores a touchdown. So, Bryce, before we go through the ins and the outs, let me just a little overarching theme here. Today again proved to me when the Giants win a football game, I am a sicko fan. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're not. But I know a couple of people that were at my house today, including my next door neighbor Dave, feel the same way. What a mood changer for the week. And I realized my miserable mood for the last 2 weeks wasn't my beautiful wife nagging me, wasn't my kids asking for too much, wasn't, work and dealing with, phone calls. It was just the mere fact that the Giants hadn't won a football game. And today, no matter where the season goes, whether it's only 4 more wins or 3 more wins or 7 more wins or 2 more wins or 1 more win or no more wins, for a night, man, it just feels good to be part of the NFL. And that's what tonight's all about, Bryce.
I do subscribe to the same belief. I think we've talked about it so many times in this podcast with how young I am and the fact that I really only know pathetic, miserable football. So I've almost built up this wall and this this defense system towards the Giants losing football games. So it's not as bad. It's a miserable week if they lose in the fashion in which they lost in the first week. That's for sure. Last week was whatever. I mean, that was pathetic, but we thought the season was over. Now they win. They give us some hope. And I realize what it feels like to be a fan of a football team who actually wins a game. It's been so long, right, Shaun. It really has.
It has been so long. And look, I know that I have made a lot of references to tanking, and perhaps I will make a lot more references to tanking as the season goes along. The point is, though, when you sit down and watch Giants football, whether I rooted for a loss or rooted for a win today doesn't really matter because I have no outcome on what is on the field. And if the Giants were going to win a game and at least give us some kind of hope for the season, this was it, right? I mean, this was a big one for this coaching staff. Obviously, the general manager, Joe Shaun, because you start 0-3 and you look at the Cowboys on a short week, things could spiral. And I've maintained this from the beginning. Before we get to what actually happened, I do like Brian Daboll, the coach, and I do see the long-term vision for Joe Shaun, the general manager, and I do prefer a world where the Giants properly thread the needle between winning enough games that John Mara sees that he has something, and that we should want the coach and general manager to succeed, by the way. We shouldn't want a house cleaning. We should want them to be good enough to succeed, and also, I guess, lose enough games where this team could find a quarterback. 0-2, they found that today, beating a team on the road. To say what you want to say about Deshaun Watson, but a playoff team from a year ago nonetheless. And look, I found a way to find the positives on our preview pod and pick a Giant win. Bryce was not as optimistic, clearly. I even turned to pessimism by the time my afternoon show with Evan and Tiki rolled around on Friday, and I started to see the negatives. But, man, they found a way on the road versus a really good defense and dropped 21 points in the first half. Wasn't good enough to score enough points in the second half. More on that enough later. But it was enough to get the job done. So let's just start here, Bryce. Game starts. Kickoff to Eric Gray. Fumble Ruski. One play later, it's Amari Cooper. With all due respect, I thought Tay Banks actually really good coverage on the play, just an unbelievable throw and catch. And before you could sit down, I hadn't even nibbled on a wing yet, and the Giants were down 7-0. I don't know where you stood. My immediacy was, oh my God, just when I thought last week was rock bottom, they can't get any worse. I don't know, Bryce. I thought for sure loss in the opening moments. I thought this game was going to spiral out of control quickly.
I was running through the streets of Manhattan like a crazy person coming from my shift at Sirius XM. I have to watch the first 20, 30 minutes on my phone because it's the 20, 30-minute walk to my apartment. And I see that. I did what any reasonable Giants fan would do. Scream, what the, you know what? How does this happen? Where is this going from here? And we all collectively had an idea of where it was going. A blowout loss with especially, listen, the fumble happens. You're like, okay, all right, or whatever. I mean, they might be able to come back. And then you see Deshaun Watson have his best throw of his Browns career to Amari Cooper, again, with really good coverage from Tay Banks. And he still catches it, toe taps, bang, down 7-0, just like that. You're like, all right, the season's over. Like, I hate to be like that. I hate to be like old man yells at cloud, the sky is falling. You know, like I'm trying to be better with that. But when you start 0-2 in the matter that you lost last week and you start this week, this game, the way that you started it, how else could we have thought? You know, like how could you possibly be not pessimistic about the Giants' chances going forward after that start? And you got to give them credit, Shaun. You really do. Yeah. They recovered. They really did.
You do, and I promise we're going to get to more positives here. That was just a negative start the game. Put a pin in the Eric Gray kick return because it's going to tie into an overarching negative thought as I get towards the end of the pod. So pin that right there on Eric Gray fumbling the opening kickoff. Game progresses on. Giants kind of get the ball back. Browns get the ball back. Giants get the ball back. I believe that was the transition that happened.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones throws what can only be described as an inexcusable interception, and we said, oh my God, here we go with Jones again. They're already down 7-0. What is this pick he threw? Now, Theo Johnson could have thought for the ball. I believe it was Theo Johnson on first glass. It was 84. But nonetheless, what do we get? A head to the head on Daniel Jones, a complete bailout, roughing the passer. Now, by the rule, that is a penalty, but it had nothing to do with Daniel Jones throwing the pick, which is the ironic part. It was a terrible pass. And I thought as the game stood there, I said, well, first of all, great break, but I don't have any confidence from this point forward because how is Jones throwing that pass? Bryce, where were you in that moment?
Exactly where you were. like they were, first off, it was a complete bailout. I didn't really see the penalty in the moment. And then when they replayed it, I was like, I'm not going to complain. How many times
they call that? Look, you know what?
How many times have we been on the wrong end of it? How many times have we been on the okay? So it is.
I hate the call, but it is a rule, and we get called on it enough, so I'm not apologizing.
Exactly. It was terrible throw, and they get bailed out, and then that same drive, which is something that I want to get to. Are we still in negatives, or can we get to the positives at this point?
Well, now we're going to flip to the positives. Again,
because they're the positive. That's what happened. Yeah.
The positives is from that point forward and that moment forward, I really thought that was a turning point, at least for the first half, if not for the game, because the Giants offense and more on the defense in the second takes over. And Daniel Jones starts getting Malik Nabers involved.
Yep.
Clearly, Devin Singletary is running the ball well at this point. They have, and by the way, they try to throw to Jalen Hyatt early in the game. They're getting Wan'Dale Robinson cooking. And, we don't have to go drive by drive, but overall, by the time you get to the end of the first half, again, just strictly talking offensively, we'll speak about the defense in a second. On the road, and I know Myles Garrett is basically hobbled on one leg and you saw him get banged up at the end there. But on the road against the Cleveland Browns, versus a team, let's be honest, anybody who hated or doubted the Giants, we kept saying that defense is so good in their own house, it's impossible. Daniel Jones in the offense, and Brian Daboll, I even thought his play calling and letting, do what the defense gave him, and Malik Nabers, who scores 2 touchdowns in that first half. They're in the dog pound. They dog walked the Browns defense for the first half and put up those 21 points. And with all due respect to what happened last week, and I know that obviously a lot of that was on the defense, not giving the offense the ball a lot. I thought that that first half versus this Cleveland defense, considering the defense they were playing, considering all the doubts and considering what they dealt with in the cards they were dealt with to start the game, that was the best half of Giants football, perhaps since the second half of that Arizona game in week 2 a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Where was the switch flipped? Where did this game change? And then it was on the 4th and 1 from the Giants' own side when Brian Daboll went back to what he used to do in 2022. Go for it. And I was looking, I'm like, here comes the punt. Here comes the punt. And guess what? They do the end around to Malik Nabers. They get the first down, and then they score in that drive, and then their offense was set for the rest of the game.
You're right.
Take your chances
terrible
when you
terrible
get them.
Job. Terrible job by me not bringing that up, right? Great job.
That's what happened. That's the flip. That's the flip. We saw that in 2022. How many times did Brian Daboll show his balls and go for it on 4th down? And it's been 2 years, Shaun, since we have seen the aggressiveness from Brian Daboll. And guess what? He probably woke up this morning and turned around in bed and was like, you know what? I'm actually going to try to go for it and instill some confidence in my team, because that's what it does. You see what the Lions with Dan Campbell, when they go for it on fourth down and they get it, they usually score right after because of the momentum. It's too much. Brian Daboll finally reverted back to what made him the coach of the year in 2022, goes for it on fourth down, a gutsy call with the end around. They get it. The rest of the game is set up right there for them.
Malik Nabers ends up becoming the first receiver in NFL history to finish their first 3 weeks with 20 or more receptions and 3 or more touchdowns. That includes Jerry Rice. That includes Chris Carter. That includes Randy Moss. I know Chris Carter didn't get off to the greatest start. My point is, think of all the great Hall of Fame receivers you've ever seen. That includes the Odell Beckham era that the Giants lived through. No receiver in NFL history, 20 or more catches, 3 or more touchdowns through the first 3 games, other than Malik Nabers. So what a great half from Nabers. Okay. Before we get to the second half of what transpired there, credit to the defense, right? Look, Deshaun Watson stinks, and this is probably the only game all year, because if you look at what Andy Dalton did with the Carolina Panthers, that we can definitively say the Giants had the quarterback advantage coming in. That's how far Deshaun Watson had fallen. I know he makes a great throw to Amari Cooper, and he had a little moment there in the second half, but overall in that first half, whether it was Dexter Lawrence, whether it was Azeez Ojulari, who seemed to be flying all over the field, he was really good today. Kayvon Thibodeau and Burns also just solid today. And I know the Browns' offensive line has been beat up, and they got more beat up as the game went on, and they stunk. But overall, we said, man, if you're investing in the trenches, the Giants' defensive line kicked the living you-know-what out of the Browns' offensive line, which is what you have to do versus a beat-up offensive line. And it left Deshaun Watson under duress all afternoon long. But forget that for a second, Bryce. Every time the Browns went to run the football, and I understand that this is not Nick Chubb's Browns. This is Jerome Ford. This is Deonta Foreman. The Giants, who have been gashed on the run through the first 2 weeks, and the Browns looked at that. Maybe the Browns didn't try enough. Maybe after getting down 21-7, they changed their play call. All of that could be true. But I'm focused on Giants football here on One Giant Step, and that's a tremendous job by the Giant defense, looking at the problems and just not allowing an opposing run game to wreck the game the way it did the first couple weeks.
8 sacks, Shaun. 8 sacks. How long have we been waiting for a game like this? How long? It's been 2 games.
Since 2016 in Cleveland, the last time they had 7 sacks.
Realistically, yeah. It has been a long, long time. On this podcast, though, Shaun, we've been talking about it now for 3 weeks straight. We've been talking about it since the offseason, since we started up for Hard Knocks. What was the one area the Giants had that we could collectively say was top 5 in the NFL? Pass rush. Guess what they didn't do in the first 2 games of the season? Get to the quarterback.
Yep.
Today they did, Shaun. They finally showed up. Azeez Ojulari, by the way. Azeez Ojulari. This is the Azeez Ojulari game. Forces a fumble, gets a sack. He played extremely well. Kayvon got involved in the mix. He got half a sack. Brian Burns with the sack. And Dexter Lawrence, baby. It all starts with the guy in the middle. Sexy Dexy, 2 sacks. He's unbelievable, man.
And I thought there were some places the game went on that I think Tay Banks wish he had back. I mean, he didn't have the greatest of games, although his coverage he got cooked. He did get cooked. He got cooked a bit, which is, look, young corner, it's going to happen. It could have been an otherworldly disaster. Maybe it would be versus a better quarterback. But now let's get to a little negativity here and the second half. I don't know what happened at halftime. And I know the Browns, again, I'm going to go back to the Browns defense is good. So if you told me, hey, Giants, by the way, I picked the Giants to win the game 19-17, right? You picked them to lose, not scoring a lot of points. If you told me before the game started, just to let you know, the Giants are scoring 3 touchdowns in this game offensively, I probably would have signed for it. So I want to make that understood that the way the game flow happened is what's going to agonize me, not the end result. The Giants won a game where they scored 21 points in Cleveland versus that defense. I'm okay with it. But, man, it just felt like it was more an effort by Brian Daboll, and maybe it's a lack of trust in Daniel Jones, to which I guess I understand a little bit. But it really felt like they took the foot off the gas in the second half. And yes, the Devin Singletary fumble for the second straight week is an absolute killer. That cannot happen. Devin Singletary knows it can't happen. But I don't know if you got the same vibes, Bryce, but this goes back to, if I'm going to kind of theme this all up, let's say, I didn't think this was a great Daboll game. All right. Number one, I understand that Gunnar Olszewski's hurt. But we tried the return stuff last year with Eric Gray, and he was abysmal. And I know that's punt returns compared to kick returns. You sign, and I don't have the guy's name right, but he ended up returning punts later in the game. Anybody who's listening knows the guy's name. They signed him 2 weeks ago. He was on the roster today. Why he's not returning kicks and just punts, I don't know. To have Eric Gray start the game like that as a kick returner, one hand on the ball, goes right back out there, his second kick return, again, the one arm on the ball. That's just, to me, that's terrible coaching. It's understanding Eric Gray's just not a good return man to begin with. And number two, help the guy out. Can we teach him some fundamentals there on how to hold on to the ball? But now I tie that into the second half of the game. Really? We're getting that conservative, really? I mean, you have them on their heels. I mean, they can't even figure out Malik Nabers and company. And I just felt like the Giants had that one quick 3 and out in the second half where they took a couple shots, 2 to Malik Nabers, didn't get any completions, and then Brian Dable said, forget about it, to hell with this. I'm going to basically try to knee this thing out for 2 quarters. And it nearly came back to haunt them if the Browns had a competent offense, Bryce. I was a little frustrated with Brian Dable's play calling in the second half. And honestly, Daniel Jones wasn't great in the second half either. Wasn't making a lot of big-time completions. But I still think that came more to game plan and strategy, and he was calling the game he was asked to be called.
They were playing not to lose, Shaun.
They were.
Which I think is unacceptable, especially in a game in which you need to win so desperately. It's like, all right, well, we know who we have. We know the personnel. We're going to try our best to make sure that personnel doesn't lose us the game. What was it at halftime? It was 21-7. So you're up by 14 points, right? You got 14-point cushion. Keep the foot on the keep the pedal to the metal.
And if
the
they
foot on the gas.
If they didn't get the turnover leading to the from going from 14 to 21 with the offense there, would they have played that way? They would have lost the game.
Yeah. I mean, and there were a few instances. One that comes to mind was Daniel Jones missing a wide open Wan'Dale Robinson.
That was terrible.
The crossing route.
Terrible throw.
That was 5 minutes left in the game. You have the game won if he catches the ball. They gave the Browns plenty of chances to come back, potentially win this game. You can't be making mistakes like that. That's like, you got to make that completion. That's a very easy slant route over the middle of the field, the crossing route, whatever it was. It's unacceptable. And I think that you could be happy with the win. We could sit here and collectively, take away what was a really good football game played by the Giants defense, by the front seven. But at the same time, we could objectively look at it and say, that can't happen again, in which the Giants just completely forget what was working and stop, doing what was working in the first half, which is being aggressive, Shaun.
Yeah, that I would much prefer better coaching, but it just shows you, man. Last week, the Giants seemingly do everything right, but dress a kicker, lose a game when they score 3 or more touchdowns, don't allow a touchdown. Then this week, do enough in the first half, completely almost go into, scared to win the game mode, but still prevail with the win. And that's just football. Ultimately, the end result is the Giants do win a game. Okay. And obviously, I don't need to get into statistics of playoff teams from 0-2 to 0-3. We know it falls off. The Giants, if you are somebody out there that does want a season and believes in a season, to me, I'm just believing in one day, and I'm happy with the one day that the Giants got. But, Thursday night, you're a little more fired up. I mean, we'll get into the preview of that Cowboy game, and that's neither here nor there, whether you want to have the positivity or the negativity. But the bottom line is this. It's impossible not to be a little more intrigued and a little more revved up. Dallas Cowboys end up losing to the Ravens when you win a football game like that. So the Giants did their job. And in the end, I do have to credit Daniel Jones because that's a good defense. Look, we can't move the goalposts here. That's supposedly one of the elite defenses in football, albeit Myles Garrett's banged up, and they are a better defense in their own building. And Daniel Jones went out there and produced 3 touchdown drives for this football team, and they win the game, and their defense answered the bell for the most part, compared to where they were a week ago. And you take him anywhere you can get him. And you know it, man. In football, wins can be infectious. And what a feel and what a change. The thing that sucks, and the thing we'll get to, the Giants have to prove at some point they can hang with the Dallas Cowboys, and this is a very vulnerable Dallas team. Yeah. What I hate about this more than anything, Bryce, can I enjoy a goddamn win for a week? Do we need this game on it? Part of my French, but I mean, it's Thursday, and we have a bad history with getting our asses kicked by the Dallas Cowboys. I hope that isn't the case, and a win on Thursday would be awesome. But the idea that the Giants are the spot where you can't even enjoy this win for the full week, it just kills me. It absolutely kills me, but it's a win nonetheless. Bryce, I think we should wrap it here. We're going to produce 3 this week. You can probably hear my voice. It's a little shot. Shawnee needs to shut it down. We've had ourselves a day. The Giants had themselves a day. at Bryce Gelman, BryceGelman, at Shaun Morash, ShaunMorash, both on X, both on Twitter. Hit us up with any questions, thoughts on the pod. We get any good questions, we'll read them on our preview pod, which should drop sometime Wednesday, Thursday morning. We'll figure it out. Me and Brycey, we'll get in the lab, we'll figure it all out. And we'll get cooking, man. It's a giant win. It's going to be a victory Monday here and a short week ahead to a home game with the Dallas Cowboys. Download and subscribe everywhere you get your podcasts, and of course, free on the Odyssey app. Thanks, everyone, for taking one giant step with us.